It was one of those humid summer evenings where the air sticks to your skin like a second shirt, and even the mosquitoes seem to move slower. My name's Nate. I'm 32 now, but back then, I was 23, barely scraping by with a cluttered suitcase of regrets and unfinished dreams. I'd flown home for a family barbecue in late July, the kind of event that, in theory, was supposed to bring everyone together. Hot dogs, loud uncles, and cheap plastic chairs sinking into the lawn. My older brother had just gotten promoted, my sister had announced her engagement on Facebook the night before, and my youngest sibling, my parents' golden child, was freshly accepted into some fancy pre-law program. Me? I was the one who booked the cheapest red-eye ticket back to a town I swore I'd outgrow. I remember stepping into that backyard and immediately feeling like a background character in my own family. Nobody looked surprised to see me. No hugs, just distracted nods and one offhand, "Oh, you made it," from my mom as she passed me a plate like she was handing it to a stranger in line. I told myself not to expect much. It was just a barbecue, not some grand reunion. But even that mindset didn't prepare me for what came next. It started with drinking. It always does, doesn't it? A few too many glasses and suddenly everyone thinks they're the star of a Netflix special. My dad stood in the middle of a circle of aunts, uncles, and neighbors, retelling the same old stories about how he coached my brother's high school baseball team to the playoffs, how my sister won that county science fair, how the youngest got a full ride. Then, right when I reached for the corn on the cob, he pointed over at me and said with a chuckle, "And that one, well, he's the one who'll never amount to anything." I froze. At first, I thought I'd misheard him. Maybe he meant it as a joke. But then my mom added, loud and clear, "We don't even count him anymore. 3 kids, not 4. Everyone laughed. Everyone. My uncle gave me a sympathetic glance, but didn't say a word. I just sat there, holding my paper plate with half a burger and a deviled egg, watching them pick me apart like I wasn't sitting 10 feet away. My cousin even leaned over to whisper something to his girlfriend, and she looked right at me and snickered. It wasn't just cruel, it was deliberate, like they were trying to humiliate me in surround sound. I didn't say a word. Not then. I just stood up slowly, walked back into the house, and sat in my childhood bedroom, still plastered with faded posters and the scent of old books and teenage dreams that never came true. I stared at the walls for hours. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just detached. Something in me snapped quietly, like a cord finally giving way under too much pressure. That night, while they all slept off, I packed the little I had, walked out the front door, and didn't look back. No dramatic goodbye. No final speech. Just silence. The next day, I changed my number, canceled my return flight, booked a bus to a city I'd never been to, Portland. I knew no one, had no job lined up, and barely $300 to my name. But it was mine. My start. The first real one. For the first year, I worked night shifts at a 24-hour diner and wrote during the day, short stories, mostly. Some were garbage, some weren't. But the words were mine. For once, I didn't have anyone hovering over my shoulder with comparisons or back-ended advice. I slept on a futon and lived off cereal and coffee. But I was free. Years passed. I poured my entire soul into my writing. Wrote stories about broken families, about people who felt invisible, about finding strength in isolation. I never used real names, but anyone who read between the lines would feel it. The ache, the betrayal, the quiet revenge of becoming someone without them. Eventually, one of my short stories went viral online. It was raw and personal and struck a nerve with people. A publisher reached out. One thing led to another, and at 31, I released my first full-length book. A memoir, though I didn't market it as one. Just a novel, inspired by true events. The book caught fire. Reviews poured in. I did podcasts, interviews, late-night radio spots. People messaged me from all over saying it helped them through dark times. It was surreal. This version of me people now knew was so far removed from the boy sitting at that barbecue, quietly being torn apart. And yet, that night had written itself into every chapter. I never mentioned my family. Not once. But they noticed. Oh, they noticed. Which brings me to a rainy Thursday evening at a local bookstore in Seattle, where I was scheduled to do a signing. The place was buzzing, a full house, the line curling out the door. That's when I saw them. My parents, standing awkwardly near the back, soaked from the rain, clinging to one shared umbrella. My mom's eyes were already red. My dad looked smaller than I remembered. They didn't try to push forward. They just waited. When I finished speaking, I signed copies, took photos, thanked readers one by one. Then I saw them slowly approaching the table. My mom was the first to speak. "Nate," she said softly, like saying my name would erase 9 years of silence. "We miss you. We didn't know you were hurting. We're so proud of you." My dad added, "We read the book. It's beautiful. Painful, but beautiful. We're sorry." They both looked at me, hoping for something. Maybe a hug, maybe tears, maybe a second chance. But I just looked back at them, face calm, voice even, and said, "I think you came here for closure, but I already got mine years ago. The night you laughed about forgetting I existed, that was your goodbye? You just didn't realize it." My mom's lip trembled. She opened her mouth, but I raised a hand gently. "Not angry, just done. You didn't lose me because of one barbecue. You lost me every time you chose to ignore me. Every time you called me lazy while I was struggling. Every time you lifted up my siblings like trophies and treated me like a mistake. That dinner just made it official." My dad's eyes flicked around nervously, probably realizing people were starting to notice the scene. "We just didn't understand you back then. You were so different. You always had your head in the clouds, and we thought if we pushed you harder, you'd grow up." "That wasn't tough love," I replied. "That was cruelty dressed up as parenting. And it wasn't just when I was a kid. It never stopped. You mocked me in front of family like it was entertainment. You erased me while I was still sitting right there." A hush had fallen over the nearby tables. I noticed a woman in the corner, holding a book and pretending to read while clearly listening. Another couple had subtly stopped signing the posters they brought and were just watching. I didn't care. Let them hear. "I didn't come here to make a scene," my mom whispered. "We just wanted to tell you we love you." I let the silence sit between us for a beat. Then I reached down beside my chair, pulled out a copy of the hardcover edition, one of the early prints, and slid it across the table. It was signed already, but this one was special. "Page 213, I said. "Read it when you get home. Really read it. That chapter's called Ghosts with Living Names. It's about the night of the barbecue. It's the only time I ever wrote about you directly. You asked what I did with the pain? I put it there." My mom clutched the book like it was fragile. My dad nodded, eyes misty now. They didn't ask for a photo. They didn't try to hug me again. They just stood there for a moment longer, like they were waiting for the version of me from a decade ago to come back. But he was long gone, and the man sitting in front of them had nothing left to prove. Then they turned and walked out into the rain, the store doors swinging shut behind them. I sat there for a few seconds, letting my heart steady itself. The past had just walked in and tried to rewrite itself, but I didn't let it. I didn't rage, didn't forgive, didn't collapse. I simply told the truth and let it land where it needed to. When the event wrapped up, I packed my things and went back to my hotel. The lights of the city blinked outside my window, but my mind was quiet. No racing thoughts, no echo of my mom's voice calling me a disappointment. Just calm. Later that week, something strange happened. A cousin I hadn't spoken to in years messaged me on Instagram. All it said was, "They're embarrassed. I think they expected you to fall apart. Instead, you became everything they told people you'd never be." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. The message wasn't for me. It was for the version of Nate who used to sit silently at barbecues, laughing along just to fit in. The one who used to beg for scraps of approval. That version didn't exist anymore. But just when I thought the whole chapter was closed, I got an email that made my stomach flip. It was from my younger brother, the golden child. "Hey," it read. "I know we haven't talked in a long time, but Mom and Dad are freaking out about what you said at the signing. They feel like you humiliated them on purpose. They think you plotted this. Dad says you should issue a public apology." I blinked at the screen. A public apology? I scrolled down and saw another line. "I get it, man. I really do. But if you ever want to talk to me, I'm here." I've started realizing some things too, and I think there's a lot we all ignored. That caught me off guard. I didn't reply right away. I sat with it. Thought about all the nights I watched my brother get praised for existing while I got grilled for trying. Thought about whether people really change, or if they only change when the story stops favoring them. But what he said stuck in my head. I've started realizing some things too. And suddenly, I wasn't just dealing with my parents anymore. There was another player on the board, one I hadn't accounted for. One who'd always been shielded from the truth, but who might now be peeking through the cracks. And part of me wondered, just wondered, What would happen if I opened that door just an inch? I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was upset, but because my mind was spinning. For the first time in years, the idea of reconnecting with anyone from my past didn't make me instantly recoil. My brother's message wasn't groveling, but it wasn't defensive either. It felt neutral, thoughtful, maybe even genuine. But then again, I've been burned before. I waited 3 days before replying. And even then, it was brief. Appreciate the message. Not ready to talk yet, but I see you. He replied within minutes. That's fair. No pressure. Just wanted you to know I'm here when you are. That was it. No push, no guilt trip. And that's what got me thinking. You see, growing up, my younger brother, Ryan, had always been the son they bragged about. Captain of the debate team, early decision at an Ivy League school, handshakes from every uncle at family gatherings. But when I really looked back, I realized something I had never let myself admit. He wasn't always comfortable with it. He just played along. Maybe because he thought it was safer than questioning anything. Maybe because he didn't want to end up like me. Back when we were teens, he used to sneak into my room late at night when our parents were fighting, mostly about money, or me, or whatever disappointed them that week. We'd just sit in silence and listen to the muffled yelling through the vents. He was the only one who ever saw how bad things really got. Maybe he forgot that. Or maybe he didn't. And now, all these years later, he was the first one to reach out. I didn't jump into anything. I stayed focused on my book tour, on interviews and reader letters and emails from people who said the story helped them leave toxic homes or finally start therapy. It was overwhelming in the best way. I had built something solid from the broken pieces. I wasn't about to risk it for nostalgia. But then, about a month later, I got another message. This one wasn't from Ryan. It was from my old high school teacher, Mr. Wallace. Nate, I read the book. Powerful stuff. Didn't realize it was you until halfway through. Your parents came by the school last week, trying to do damage control. Claimed you made everything up. I didn't say anything, but I thought you should know. That email hit me differently. Because it confirmed something I suspected all along. They weren't sorry. They were embarrassed. Not by what they did, but by the fact that the world now knew. I didn't reply to Mr. Wallace, but I sat with that information. And I realized it was time for me to take control of the narrative again. So I planned something. A month later, I announced a surprise second print edition of the book with a new foreword, something raw, something honest, something personal. It wouldn't name names. I didn't need to. The people who knew would know. In that foreword, I wrote, some wounds don't scar over. They stay open. But healing doesn't mean pretending the knife was never there. Healing means writing the truth anyway. For anyone else who was erased while still standing in the room, this book is yours now. I'm not here to fix my past. I'm here to make sure it never repeats itself. The response was electric. The second print sold out within days. But the backlash came quickly too from the only people who had something to feel guilty about. It started with a letter. A real, handwritten letter, postmarked from my parents' town. Inside, in my mom's cursive, were 2 pages that swung wildly between apology, defensiveness, and thinly veiled threats. She wrote about how my story was hurting the family, how my aunt's church friends had stopped calling, how my cousin didn't get invited to a scholarship panel because of the shame surrounding our name. And at the end, she wrote, you need to call us. We are still your parents. You're not allowed to rewrite the truth. That line, you're not allowed to rewrite the truth. As if they hadn't been the authors of every lie I lived with for over 2 decades. I took a deep breath, and I didn't respond. But then something happened that changed everything. Ryan showed up in person. I was at a small signing event in Austin. Smaller crowd, intimate setting, nothing flashy. Afterward, while chatting with a few readers, I saw a figure in the back of the room, hands in his pockets, shifting awkwardly. He looked older, tired, in a way I recognized. When our eyes met, I knew immediately. He gave a hesitant wave. I didn't wave back. I just stared. He waited until the crowd thinned out before approaching. Hey, he said softly. Didn't want to email this time. I stayed quiet. He continued. I left home 2 weeks ago. Moved in with a friend. I couldn't take it anymore. They've been obsessed with your book. Not because of what's in it, but because they can't control how people see them anymore. They're unraveling. I raised an eyebrow. Still not sure where this was going. I just wanted you to know, he said. You were right. About all of it. And I think I always knew that. I just didn't have the courage to say it. I studied him for a moment, then finally asked, why now? He looked down at the floor. Because I realized that if I didn't leave, I'd end up like them. And I'd rather be the brother who shows up late than the one who never shows up at all. And for the first time in nearly a decade, I said his name out loud. Ryan. His eyes shot up. I don't know if I forgive you yet, I said, not unkindly. But I hear you. He nodded. That was enough for him. And just as I thought this chapter might be finding a new rhythm, just as the dust seemed to be settling, a journalist from a major publication emailed me. We're doing a feature on family estrangement and reconciliation. We'd love to include your story, especially since your parents have reached out to us with their side. I blinked at the screen. My parents going to the press? I stared at the email for a long time, rereading that last line, especially since your parents have reached out to us with their side. So that was their next move. They couldn't reach me, couldn't guilt-trip me, couldn't shame me into silence. So now they were trying to reclaim the narrative publicly. It wasn't about healing. It was about image, about reputation, about control. And they were about to learn that I wasn't 19 anymore. I wasn't the kid who shrunk into himself every time they spoke over me. I had a voice now, and they had no idea just how loud it had become. I responded to the journalist within the hour. I'll speak, but only if it's live. No edits, no filters, no room for spin. I'll bring receipts, literal ones. She agreed. A week later, the interview aired. It was titled, Forgotten Son, How One Man Turned His Family's Cruelty into a Bestseller and Why He'll Never Go Back. It started with a calm sit-down. The journalist asked questions about my book, my past, my sudden rise in the literary world. Then she asked the real one. Your parents said you've exaggerated, that they were just doing their best, that they're hurt by the way you've portrayed them. Do you regret anything you wrote? I didn't blink. No, I said, because the words they're upset about were the truth. And for every person they're trying to fool now, I've got a lifetime of memories that don't lie. Then I pulled out an old spiral notebook, the one I'd kept hidden in my room from age 12 to 20, filled with journal entries, dates, quotes, verbatim things they'd said. I'd copied down moments they thought I'd forget. But I didn't. Not when my dad told a room full of people I'd never amount to anything. Not when my mom laughed and said she only had 3 kids. Not when I sat there, quiet, because speaking up never made a difference. I read passages from that notebook, and as the camera zoomed in, you could see my hands were steady. My voice never cracked. I wasn't telling a sob story. I was stating facts. I ended the interview with this. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is walk away and stay away. Not out of spite, but self-respect. I didn't get here by burning bridges. I got here by surviving the ones they set on fire and blamed me for standing too close to. When the episode aired, the reaction was immediate. Emails flooded in. People from around the world, strangers, shared their own stories of being the forgotten one, the disappointment, the black sheep. Book sales tripled within 2 weeks. My publisher called it a cultural moment. My parents? They vanished from the media cycle almost instantly. No more interviews. No follow-ups. No statements. Turns out, when the spotlight isn't flattering, it gets hot fast. Ryan texted me later that week. They're furious. Said you humiliated them? I told them they did that to themselves a long time ago. I didn't reply. He didn't expect me to. We had spoken again since Austin. Slowly, carefully. I didn't trust easily, but I let the door stay slightly open for him. He never tried to push it wide. Just showed up. Quiet. Present. One night, months later, we sat on a bench outside a coffee shop. Ryan turned to me and said, You know, they still say they want to make things right. I sipped my drink. They don't want to make things right, I said. They want to look right. He nodded. Yeah, that's what I finally realized, too. I didn't hate them. I didn't wish them harm. I just didn't owe them access to me anymore. And that, I think, was what scared them the most. Because people like them can handle anger. They can even twist guilt to work in their favor. But silence? Distance? Peace? That's what they can't manipulate. They showed up at my next book signing, but not to talk, not to grovel. They stood outside the store, behind the glass, and watched from a distance. I didn't wave. I didn't even turn. I stood beneath a banner that read, #1 bestseller, The Son They Forgot, smiled at the crowd, and kept signing. And when they finally left, I knew. They'd never show their faces again. Because this time, the world saw me. And this time, I didn't disappear.